Sup nerds, I'm Tom.
I'm Wes.
And this big old box right here is Tidal Blades. Let's talk about it.
So if you can't tell, we do have the deluxe edition, which is why this box is so big. So some of the components may not be what you pull off the retail shelf, but the game is just as amazing.
We actually first got to play this game in prototype form back in Gen Con, I want to say 2018, not 2019, I think.
It may have been 2017.
No, it wasn't that. No.
2018 was the prototype. 2019 we played the Kickstarter prototype, which had a bit of changes. And then 2020 we played the Kickstarter edition.
What you're seeing, right.
But needless to say, I have loved this game in every iteration that I have played. Like, it is a game that always leaves me, like, itching to play more.
At its core, this is a worker placement game with dice. It really does feel like Champions of Midgard kind of on steroids. Like, it's probably the complexity level of Champions of Midgard with the expansions. But it does play differently. More importantly, though, we were talking about the prototype. The very first prototype we had workers. And here you have just one worker and you move it around and drop discs. You're just simulating having multiple workers, but like you want it to feel thematically like you are one person.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it does function exactly the same. But like when I was showing someone, they're like, oh, it's like Istanbul. No, it's not like Istanbul. It's just worker placement. You could keep the mini, in theory, like on your mat, and then just have these discs as your workers and just place a disc out if you want to. And it just doesn't look as cool.
Yeah, and this game definitely does lean really heavy into the thematics. Like, there's a ton of lore built up behind it. The Kickstarter edition actually comes with, like, a lore book to it. And I think the thematics do really, like, it's beautiful thematics, beautiful artwork that really pairs well with the gameplay.
And what the gameplay is, like I said, worker placement. But let's say if you go to place on a spot over here, you get whatever you cover up. So in this example, I would get 2 shells. Okay, but you also get the thing for that area, which means you get to buy a card from the market, which actually we didn't put out here. But okay, another example over here, if you come over there, you get what you cover up. Okay, I get the first player token and a fruit. Okay, but then the boat advances and you get whatever the boat gets. So that's what that little island's thing is. So you like get double things. And I think design space wise, they could, in theory, come out with expansion. They already have an expansion, which is an additional island that has a different effect and stuff. But I think they could come up with more islands that replace things. Now, there are other elements to the game. There are these challenge cards, and you have like your own personal deck of cards that do actually refer to the island themselves. Like, we'll talk about Droska Ring. But I bet you there's still a possibility for them to introduce like a different version of Droska Ring.
Yeah, there could be like a dark mode or like a night mode where like it's the seedy underbelly and now everything's like creepier artwork, but it's still the same place.
But like, okay, for example, in Lamara Stadium, it's the boat that I just explained.
Yeah.
There are character cards that will give you the special ability that is move the boat an extra space. So they would need to come up with just another Lamar Stadium that has a boat that's just different from that circle. It could be like, it could be a bunch of branching things and it teleports or whatever.
Yeah.
Just throwing stuff out there.
And like you said, it is a lot like Champions of Midgard because you were getting dice. There's actually a really cool like tech tree with the dice for your dice upgrade as they go. And then once they get to the top level, you can like choose which like not mechanic or specialty.
Which it's like symbols. Like
yeah.
There's 4 different symbols, right? And then when you get to level 4, that die is pretty much just that symbol.
Yeah, you say, I really want to focus on this thing, and like the monsters you have to go fight, some of them like need specific upgraded die to do damage to like specific places, so you may want to upgrade in that direction for the monsters, or like each character has an affinity that it leans towards. So, like, if you're playing with Cayman, there's going to be, like, specific symbols that he is better for or that, like, his upgrade cards benefit. Like, oh, well, you can now use your spirit placement as your focus. So maybe you want to focus on the spirit symbol because you're technically upgrading 2 dials at once with that. Just a lot of really cool stuff that's, like, all kind of meshing together and different reasons why you'd want to do like upgrade your dice in certain ways or get this specific upgrade card.
Right. And I know we're jumping around here like crazy, which is how, we do all of our videos. I don't know why anybody watches them. They're so ridiculous. But so just to kind of explain a little bit more about how the game works is place a worker, get the stuff on the spot, get the stuff at the island, and then you can complete a challenge, which is what we were talking about here with these dice. And depending on where you are, is the challenge you get to complete. And then whenever you roll the dice, if you want to match the symbols, like this example I have right here is called Tight Grip. I want to get 2 of the focus symbols and 1 of the synergy symbol. So if I complete those 2, I complete the card and I score it for points. But also, since I match those 2 symbols, I now increase my focus dial up. And you see that everybody has these player boards. Focus is the number of dice you roll when you go do challenges, like I just said, or the monsters, which is another thing we'll talk about later. Spirit is mostly about there's these cards that you can get that are like one-time bonus abilities, and they usually do them to the level of your spirit. Synergy is your special ability cards that he was talking about earlier, and then resilience is the number of dice that you get to refresh and upgrade every round. So like you want to dial all of these up if you can.
But the game is definitely not long enough. It's definitely one of those games where like if there were 2 more rounds, I'd be perfectly happy because I'd get to upgrade a lot more stuff. But I think they kind of cut you off before you start just like comboing out of control.
Now there is a variant where you do get an extra round, but the thing is you only start with 2 discs and then you get a third one and then you get a fourth one later on. And even when they add that extra round, it's still an extra round of only having 2 discs. So it does feel a little bit nerfed, like you're saying. Like even adding that extra round is like still I get 2 more placements. It's not that much. But also, I feel like, unless you're playing with max players, blocking isn't that big of a deal.
Not really.
There's so much, this game is so plentiful, I very rarely feel like, you took the thing I wanted.
It may take you a second to figure out, like, okay, well, since you took that, how else can I make this work? I can come over here and get this thing, or, like, okay, well, I didn't get the specific, resource I wanted, but I can still go here and make it work. Now, the other thing you mentioned was the Rift, which is where the monsters are. And that's kind of where they give the punishing mechanic of you have to go there. Because everything else is kind of like getting challenges, getting dice, completing challenges, getting bonuses and stuff. And then over there, you have these monsters that you go fight. And the monsters kind of move down and you get bonuses for doing damage. You get bonus if you're the one to kill it. So even if Tom does 4 or 5 damage and I do the last one, I still get a bonus. But there's also a penalty if it moves all the way through and you haven't done any damage because I guess you're a coward and the town, you lose favor with the town because you didn't actually try to help fight it off. So I know it does have that you kind of have to go over there and do that thing. But I feel like there's enough good stuff that happens there and enough reasons why you would want to go fight those that I wasn't put off at all by that.
Well, and you're using the word have to. It's one of those do it or else. It's a negative effect if this guy's number gets rolled or if he runs off and you have not gone over there. But also sometimes you can look at it and say, that's actually not that big of a deal for what I'm going for, especially in the last round of the game.
Yeah.
You may want to go over there because again, every damage you do is a point. But again, in the last round of the game, you could be like, if I don't do it, I'm going to lose a die. Who cares?
And I think it's a do it or else, but the or else isn't that bad. And if you do it, it has a lot of... It's not there's no reward. It's just do it or it sucks. It's do it or else, but if you do it, you get a lot of good stuff.
And that's the thing with this game in the whole. It's always you get a lot of good stuff. I very rarely felt starved. Very rarely felt like I didn't have enough resources, or even when going to complete cards, I felt I always, even if I rolled just these the novice die, it's still it's a 2 out of 6, right? Because you have the wild and the actual symbol itself, and you also roll that danger die, which you can spend shells. We didn't even talk about shell shields. You can spend shells to block an X. If you always roll this die that has X's on it and some blanks, right? If you roll an X, that means you lose a die. If you don't roll an X, you can just re-roll. So that feels good when that happens. But also, if you roll an X, you can block that by taking a shell, from your supply and putting it on your shell shield. And once your shell shield has enough shells, you can spend those for an ability. So it always feels like you can do stuff.
Yeah, and the do stuff combos. Because again, it's like, oh, I want to put this here on my shell shield. Now that I've done that enough times, I can do more stuff.
Even like some players will be like, I'll watch other players roll dice and be like, I don't know if I could block it. I'm like, well, if you block it and you re-roll and you don't get the symbols, that'll be enough shells to just get it anyways. Just spend it to flip the die to what you want.
So earlier you also mentioned your special abilities, which is your synergy. As this dial goes up, you get to draw 2 cards from your special ability deck to make your character better and better. But whenever you do it, you draw 2 cards and you pick one, and you know that whichever one you don't pick, you never see again that game. Which can make some really like difficult choices because they're all awesome. And so definitely like you can like make your character towards your playstyle. Like, oh, I'm really going for this, so I want this ability. But even that, I love that when you have to make a hard choice, it's not like, oh, which one of these is better for me in the long run. It's like, I want both of them. Which one do I want even more? You know, it's not like it sucks either way, which sucks less.
It's the example of things being very plentiful.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, okay, gain 10 points for doing this. Well, I'm going to spend several turns scraping and clawing to get the resources I need to spend this to get the 10 points. It's gain 10 points for this, 5 points for this, 6 points for that, 7 points for this, 8 points for that. I'm like, okay, I think I can do this, this, and this, which would let me get the 8 points, the 10 point, and the 7 point one. But maybe if I do this as a wild for that, maybe I could also get that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is my favorite feeling in games. My absolute favorite. Well, yeah, probably that. But now we've been gushing over this game. Do we have some complaints? Well, you just kind of listed one. But for me, at least, most of my complaints are kind of component-wise. And I know this game is absolutely beautiful. Tom, how can you complain about a game that's so beautiful? Well, it is ginormongous. We have this really nice, awesome game toppers table. Link in the description box down below. But boom. Now we don't have to say it at the end. And it's like this game can barely fit on here. Like this right here is your player board, but then you also have your special ability cards and you draw more. Like you have your deck and you have your shell shield and you have your personal goal if you're not using the ones that go in the middle. Like, come on. This very few, like at my apartment, I cannot play this game. This is a take to somebody else's house game and play only. And putting this in my car is like, this is huge.
I wouldn't complain. Like, it is definitely a big box. Now, again, retail is going to be a more reasonable size box because this does have, like, the awesome dice tray and, like, all these big deluxe components. Because in the retail game, you get, like, standees, not minis, and you don't get squishy fruit, you get tokens. Those kind of complaints are really funny to me because it's like, my only complaint is that the game is too nice. Like,
that really
it's
is,
so deluxe that, like, I can't even handle it. It's like, I have too much cake on my birthday.
Well, okay, but in my defense, this could have been like an Imperial Assault size box, or even like a Gloomhaven size box. I just don't. It's too. I can't even put it in the what is it? The board game tables bag, that backpack thing. If I put the backpack on its side, I can't lay this in. You know what I mean? And it's so thin that I'm like worried when I pick it up with one hand. I'm worried it's gonna. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying.
So if you can't tell, we are fishing for complaints. Like,
well, I don't know. This would fall into the solid complaint because it just could have been something else. They just made this was just a bad choice. You know what I mean?
It was a choice that you didn't agree with. Like,
and nobody else I've shown this to agrees with this. Everybody goes, "Wow, that's really big and thin." And I go, "Yeah, it's really hard to get in and out of my car and stuff." And they're like, "Yeah, it could have just been like a Gloomhaven size box." And I go, "Yeah, it couldn't have been."
You could just have a Game Toppers table at your house, so you don't have to ever take it out of your house. People come to you to play this game.
So the game's just forever set up on my table.
Yes, you have a Tidal Blades table at your house. There's my game table and my Tidal Blades table.
If only.
Other than that, I really don't have any complaints with this game. I've loved it every single time I've ever played it. With doing so many like Kickstarters and prototype games, there are definitely games where like I play it and I'm super excited about it, and by the time the Kickstarter fulfills, like I've moved past it, or like more stuff's come out and better games have come out. This is one that absolutely did not happen with. Like getting the actual like real edition of the game and getting to play it, it was just as great as the first time I played it.
All right, you guys have heard us talk enough about this game. Absolutely 100%. You should buy it. You should buy it right now. Go in the description box down below. And again, I'm pretty certain we're going to have the retail edition. But seriously, as much as I love this edition, you don't necessarily... It's not a must-have. The game itself, the gameplay is a must-have. This is one of those staple games that's going to be on everybody... I think should be on everybody's shelves.
So seriously, click that purchase link. Get yourself a copy of this game as soon as it's available. And while you're waiting for it to become available, subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored.
Ba-boom. It's going to be on everybody... I think should be on everybody's shelves.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have happened for a Gloom size